I'm Brian Brown, Billings Market President for First Interstate Bank and Chairman of the Board for the Billings Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber is proud to serve you. Every community needs a catalyst, leaders who rally people to make our place better. For the betterment of our hometown, we work together as part of something big, something important, and something meaningful. At the Billings Chamber of Commerce, we are proud to play a role that sparks significant and sustainable changes and inspires possibilities in our community. We are champions and conveners, the catalyst for business growth. Thank you to everyone for joining us for our 4th Chamber AM event presented by Untitled Technology Services. These quarterly events are designed to deliver you an in-depth look into an area that the Chamber is focusing on. This particular event happens to be our annual State of the City and County, featuring Mayor Cole and Commissioner Pittman to give their State of the City and State of the County addresses. I'd like to say thank you to the Northern Hotel, who would have been our host under normal circumstances, and to our series sponsor, Untitled Technology Services. Brandon, I'll turn it over to you to share a bit about Untitled. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Once again, we're just excited to be involved and be a community partner for the Chamber of Commerce on these type of events. We believe strongly that in both Billings and the entire state of Montana, where we have our offices and focus on providing IT support for day-to-day IT needs of small businesses, nonprofits, et cetera. Just like to thank Mayor Cole and Commissioner Pittman for taking the time to update everyone this morning, and we're just happy to be involved. Thanks again. I'll hand it over to John.
All right, thank you, Brandon, and good morning, everybody. As the 8,200 businesses or so in Billings are navigating phase 2 of the governor's reopening of the Big Sky, I just want to remind everybody of the numerous resources that are available through the Yellowstone County Economic Recovery and Response Team. Industry-specific resources that are there to help for you to open safely can be found at www.yceconomicrecovery.org, yceconomicrecovery.org. I'll post those in the chat room in just a moment. Recordings of those calls with our county health officer, the state health officer, and Yellowstone County Attorney's Office are there to help restaurants, hotels, retail event planners, and others, and they can be found again on that site. You're going to have access there to the Open and Safe Pledge and marketing support materials that hopefully you're seeing around our community and our local businesses. Recently, the Strategic Restart Team was successful in encouraging the city to pass a resolution to allow establishments to seat more customers by allowing them to temporarily expand their outdoor seating areas or create new ones where alcoholic beverages can be served. So special thanks there to Katie Easton with the Downtown Billings Association and Wyeth Friday with the city for their work on that resolution. 2 other real quick resources. The Chamber developed a toolkit recently for professional office environments to open safely for their employees. And last week, the Chamber Open Golf Tournament was a sellout and a fantastic model on how to conduct an outdoor event of that nature while following our health guidelines. So to receive any support in those areas, feel free to reach out to Jennifer Reiser, jennifer@billingschamber.com. Again, she's got some great templates and resources that can help you navigate those requirements and just help create this safe office environment as you reopen. Lastly, we want to encourage you and your employees to wear a mask for the well-being, of course, of your staff and customers, but also to improve your sales and encourage repeat visits. Recent Chamber poll showed that about 52%. So a recent Chamber poll showed about 52% of customers feel safer if your restaurant staff are wearing masks. So not only there to help you and your customers feel safe, but it helps them to encourage them to want to come back and motivate them a little bit to be repeat customers for you. So with that, I'm excited to hear from our presenters today. I think we're going to turn things over to Dan to facilitate the program. Dan.
All right, thanks, John. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dan Brooks, the Business Advocacy Director at the Chamber. I have the pleasure of introducing our 2 speakers today, but before we get to that, I'd like to remind folks that we will have a question and answer time at the end of our speeches. So please start thinking about the questions you'd like to ask our Mayor and County Commissioner, and at the end of the program, we'll choose a random winner from the queue of Q&A submissions to receive a $25 Northern gift card. All right, without further delay, let's get to the main event here. Mayor Bill Cole was born and raised in Bozeman, Montana. Bill graduated from Dartmouth College with a degree in history and received his law degree from Columbia University. Bill and his wife, Ann, moved to Billings in 1991. Ann is an instructor at MSU Billings, and they have two grown daughters, Kristen and Catherine. Bill's legal background is primarily in the areas of real estate, land use, and commercial contracts, but most of his time is now devoted to his mayoral duties. Bill and Ann have been longtime community volunteers. Bill is the former chairman and/or president of the Billings Chamber, City County Planning, Alberta Bear, and Yellowstone Area Bar Association. Bill led the team that developed the Yellowstone Kelly Interpretive Site in Swords Remote Park overlooking Billings, and is working on other projects to improve access to the beautiful Yellowstone River and majestic rimrocks. In his spare time, Bill enjoys reading Montana history, collecting antique maps of Montana, hiking, and travel. Now, Mayor, normally I'm on your public comment shot clock, but this morning you get to be on mine. So I'm officially going to grant you 15 minutes for comments. With that, Mr. Mayor, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everyone who's out there. It's an absolutely gorgeous day. Dan, is it too late to move this outdoors? I'd suggest we all run down to Dealer Park. Would that be okay with you? Maybe not. Okay, we'll scratch that, but maybe next year. I hope we don't are still not in the throes of COVID-19 then. But I do want to thank the Chamber, thank all the organizers, the sponsors, thank the Chamber and the businesses represented here for the work that you're doing to keep our economy just moving ahead in these days of COVID-19. I do have to move quickly here. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully this will work. This is the State of the City address in 900 seconds. Normally, and of course I'll talk about the city itself, but we know that city government is not the state of the city. The state of the city is the state of businesses like yours, nonprofit organizations, all of the individuals represented in our city. And fortunately, I believe the state of that city, the real city, is very good, despite three major challenges, unprecedented challenges: the pandemic, the disputes over policing and racial justice, and most recently, or continuing, our crime situation and budget challenges in the city. Despite all those things, I think the state of our city is very good. I'll have to move quickly, as I said, so I apologize if at times you feel like you're drinking from a fire hose. It will be better than this poor guy who literally had to drink from a fire hose. I mentioned coronavirus. We have been very fortunate in Billings and in Montana, having the lowest per capita rate of any state, now tied with Hawaii. We're down in that about 70 out of 100,000 population for our number of cases. Compare that to more than 2,000 per 100,000 in places like New York. Our deaths and treatment is improving, so the deaths are declining. Our healthcare facilities are nowhere near at capacity and can handle a substantial increase. Therefore, I'm very optimistic about where we stand with COVID-19. We've had great leadership in the form of our governor, John Felton, our county health officer. City and county government have all done very well, but also the business community, the Chamber, Steve Arviskow, Big Sky Economic Development, and the recovery team have worked great, and we appreciate all of their efforts. But most of all, we appreciate the efforts of our citizens who have followed guidelines and followed those hygiene and distancing guidelines. What does the future hold? Well, I think we are going to see a significant increase. We're already seeing a significant increase. I think we're also going to see a jaded acceptance of the health risks and maybe even more deaths. I think we're going to see lower compliance, unfortunately, with social distancing and masks and washing our hands, and greater social dissension over the appropriate methods. You know, is this all worth it? Should we all be wearing masks? What about when do we get back for meetings? Those are all going to be challenges. But does that spell disaster? I don't think so. I think a lot of the fear is over. We've learned that the disease is not as virulent or as contagious as originally feared, but it's still very dangerous and very contagious. We've also learned that social distancing works. So if we see an outbreak, I think we will do what we need to do. But we are in this terrible catch-22 of balancing our economy with our health. And it's easy to criticize how government or businesses strike those balances, but it's a lot harder to actually implement those decisions. I mentioned racial tensions and policing. We had the George Floyd protest on June 7th. Billings is not immune from these tensions. There were more than 1,000 protesters, more than I've ever seen. More than 20% of our population under the age of 20 in Billings is now non-white. Fortunately, the police department and the protesters did a great job on June 7th. We're going to see some discussions of, quote, defunding, not actual defunding, but there will be some legitimate discussion about redirecting resources to mental health, drug addiction prevention, treatment, community policing. But the reality is that all of those things are expensive. I've consistently stressed the need for doing at least two things, which is increasing the diversity of our police force and also better funding for the Division of Criminal Division of the Department of Justice. So if there is a shooting, the state has the resources to conduct an independent investigation. I think we'll also see a revival of our Citizens Advisory Council on the police department. I mentioned public safety. Let's focus there. The bad guys have not gone away during these days of COVID-19. This represents the number of homicides just in the last 3 months at 6. Other cities do have a lower crime rate than Billings. Billings, unfortunately, is the top. This is a couple years old, these graphs, but the trend hasn't changed. It's not just your imagination. Here in 2020, we're seeing a continuation of that trend. This bar graph is a little misleading because it just looks at the top of the bars, but we are going to continue to see a slight uptick. We're close to a plateau over the last couple of years, but a small increase of crime in 2020. The rate of crime over the last 12, 14 years has been both in the uptick in both violent crime and property crime, violent crime being a steeper curve than property crime. In recent years, they've been, again, like I said, almost a plateau, but with one very disturbing trend here in 2020, the first half, and that is the rate of family violence. You'll see the numbers that represent almost a 30% increase in the first half of 2020. Another slide that is of concern is this is our saturation rate for our police department. What this indicates is that we have about 10 calls per hour coming in on average 24 hours a day, but our capacity to handle those with current staffing is only about 5 or 6 calls. At peak times, it's off the chart. We can have 20 or 30 calls, and that's why when you call a police officer for something that is not top priority, you may have to wait, or sometimes the police officer will not even be able to arrive. It's not just the number of police, it's city prosecutors. Here in Billings, the average city attorney on the criminal side handles more than 1,800 cases each year. In Missoula, that compares to about half of that number of 800 to 900, and in Bozeman, a quarter, less than 400. The American Bar Association best practices standard around that 400 level. And it's also our fire department. This chart shows how the resources, the number of stations in blue has been stagnant for 14 years, and the level of personnel has also been essentially flat during that time period. But the number of calls to the Billings Fire Department has gone up substantially in that same time period, about 51% since 2012. And it's not just the fire department, it's also the 911 operators, municipal court personnel, code enforcement officers, and finding space for all of those people where we are having huge challenges. In order to meet those challenges, the original plan was to go out to the public with a large public safety mill levy this fall. Depending on which level of funding It could have been anywhere from just plugging our current budget hole at about $150 per $200,000 home up to close to $300 for something that would have added a lot of resources in all of those fields of public service. However, then COVID-19 hit. People talked about, would this be the next Great Depression? 20% unemployment, 25,000 people out of work every day. Continuing COVID-19 on Sunday, we hit a record worldwide for 183,000 new cases in the United States. Every day for the last week, we've been adding about 25,000 new cases of COVID-19. This is not going to go away. As a result, the city council, the chamber, everybody said we could not go ahead this year with an ask of this scale. However, the city council has determined that we really don't have the luxury of waiting, and this chart illustrates why. This is the budget deficit in our general fund and public safety funds that has existed for the last 3 years. It now is up to about $6 to $7 million, which is each year, which is this gap, which is permanent, spending outstripping revenue, and that is only going to get larger over time if something is not done. It is unsustainable. That gap represents spending. This is the pie chart that is that gap. More than 80% of that gap goes to fund police and fire, municipal court, city attorney's office, code enforcement, other public safety functions. You can't just cut spending without huge layoffs in the police, fire department, and in those other public service sectors. Why does that budget gap exist? Well, lots of reasons. Major one is we eliminated the franchise fee under threat of litigation. That added about $2.5 million to the franchise, or I'm sorry, to the general fund that is not being collected anymore, and the taxpayers are not paying that. We've also, the last public safety mill levy was in 2004. It was a flat $8.2 million that has not increased with inflation. Every year that becomes worth about $200,000 to $250,000 less. And so, and in purchasing power, and so it's declined about 50% since 2004 in 16 years. We've also added a lot more police and public safety personnel in recent years, more than 20. Their costs for COLAs, seniority increases have gone up, other costs have gone up, and of course our charter prohibits the city council from simply increasing people's taxes. As a result, Billings now has a total tax burden and an assessment burden that is at the very lowest of the major cities. We're essentially tied with Great Falls, Kalispell on the top, Bozeman, Helena, also substantially more, and Missoula substantially more total tax and assessment burden than Billings. So I said the council decided it simply could not continue to wait. And so it has unanimously approved at our meeting Monday night a much reduced public safety mill levy for voter consideration on September 15th of this year. That public safety mill levy, if passed, will repeal the 2004 flat $8.2 million levy and replace it with a 60 mill levy, which was how the 8.2 million levy was originally calculated and expected to be. But it's because of the increase of our taxable value, it's dropped in value to 40 mills. And so by replacing it with a 60 mil levy, that will increase over time, but it'll also bring in about $4 million of new money from day one. That will cost, if approved, the 211,000 median home price owner about $57. That only solves part of the problem, however, because the general fund gap is about $3.5 million. So the council also agreed to defer some new spending of about $1 million, increase Park District 1, which is an assessment that we can unilaterally raise by about $1 million, dipping into our piggy bank of dwindling reserves by about $700,000, and asking the police, fire, and parks department to split up about $750,000 of reductions and cuts. With those changes, we should be able to bring those lines back closer together. They will not touch. There will still be a deficit. We'll still be using reserves, but they will be much closer than they were before. All is not doom and gloom with the city. There's a lot of other great things happening. I think even the budget picture is a bright one because we have a plan for addressing it and having a more sustainable level of funding to close that budget gap. But in 2019, in August, the USS Billings was commissioned. It was a great success, better than we ever could have hoped for. These are the crew. It's a long-term relationship for the next 40 or 50 years. And we will continue to support the crew morally and also financially. The Parks Department continues to work in our parks and do a great job in maintenance, improving our playgrounds around the city, and also began the first construction of a major regional park in 38 years with Centennial Park, 32nd Street. These are pictures, that's a picture from last fall. I was out there about 12 hours ago, snapped some pictures. The grass is growing in. The park will not be completed. We still need to raise money for lots of trees and other amenities and playground equipment there. More pictures of the Centennial. Parks Department also working on Colson Park along the river. This could be a complete game changer to finally develop the river. It is a $16 million project, however, but if it is connected to Metra, and Metra is then connected to downtown through the 5th Avenue rail corridor for pedestrians and bikers, this could be an amazing development for Billings. Also working on the South Billings Aquatic Center down on Amon Park. We have a great plan now that's been developed. There's a huge need. The city hosts all sorts of indoor rec programs, but has no indoor rec space. The Suburra TIF district can bond and borrow about $30 to $35 million, but this is going to cost a lot more than that. And so finding that funding, especially from private donors, is going to be important. All of these park projects are hampered by our budget issues. Billings now spends about $85 per capita on its parks, compared to other Montana cities of almost twice that in Bozeman and Missoula, and some of the outliers, Bismarck, Fort Collins, more than 4 times that amount. Airport construction moving ahead. The new construction largely going to be on the north side of the existing airport. It's artist rendering. It's going to be beautiful on the inside. Construction on the west end and the basement has already begun. You won't see a lot of disruption until phase 2, when it's going to be very noticeable. Ridership at the airport is trending up from a low of only about 5,000 total inbound, outbound in April. They're now almost doubling that every month. They're hoping to get up to almost 50% of normal with July. Keep your fingers crossed. That work is being funded with $60 million. You'll notice a bonding financing element there of $24,000. And thanks to First Interstate Bank, who's been a major player in that. Landfill, building a transfer station. Public Works does a lot of work that people don't see. One of the more visible projects will be the West End Water Reservoir facility that will allow us to extend our water storage from about 4 to 8 hours to about 4 to 8 months. Also provide an amazing recreational opportunity. Planning department, Project Recode has been delayed because of COVID-19. It's hard to have public comment when people can't get together. And so they have developed a very detailed draft. I encourage anybody to read it. It is going to change the face of Billings. If you have insomnia, this will pretty well take care of that. Planning department also moving ahead with a build grant application. We're going to go back as we did last year to ask the Department of Transportation to give us about more than $20 million for construction of the Inner Belt Loop and the completion of trails, the Skyline Trail and the Stagecoach Trail on the rims which could be a complete game changer for urban transportation, for the Heights, and for bicycle and ped travel. Eastern Central Montana has not received any of these grants for more than 10 years. And I'm cautiously optimistic we're going to get it this time. I've got my fingers crossed, and that's all it should take. And it's all she wrote for me. Dan, how did I do? It's all Denis.
All right, there we go. Well, thank you so much, Mayor Cole. What a great presentation. Just like you said, drinking from the fire hose. So anyways, again, I encourage folks to start posting your Q&A into the window there. I see we've got one already in there ready to go. And a reminder that one random submitter will be chosen for a Northern Hotel gift card. So as they say, on with the show. Commissioner Denis Pittman was first elected as a Yellowstone County Commissioner in 2016 and currently is the board chairman. Denis was born in Butte and raised in Billings in 1982. Denis earned his Eagle Scout with the Boy Scouts of America. Denis graduated from Billings Senior High School in 1984 and received a bachelor's from Mount Angel Seminary College in 1988. He then attended 2 years of graduate school of theology and then received an associate's in mortuary science from Mount Hood Community College. Denis has been a licensed mortician in the state of Montana since 1994 and recently became a licensed realtor. Denis was elected and served from 2008 to 2015 as a Billings City Councilman for Ward 2, that's up in the Billings Heights. Denis is active in our community, having served on many boards and commissions. He's the former chair of the Mental Health Center Board, former vice chair of the Heights Development Task Force, co-vice chair of the Commissioning Committee for U.S. Billings, a member of the Billings Heights Kiwanis Club and the Heights Business Optimist Club, the chair of the Montana Association of Counties Urban County Committee, Montana Association of Counties Energy Committee, the Montana Association of Counties Planning Committee, the PCC, the Downtown Billings Partnership, Big Sky Economic Authority, Beartooth RC&D, and the Billings Chamber of Commerce. I can't believe we've got you for 15 minutes today. Denis has been married to Paula for 26 years and they have 7 children. All of his children adopted him, and he is an advocate for foster adopt families after being a foster parent for 15 years. He also owns several businesses in Billings. So Commissioner Pittman, the screen is yours.
Thanks for having me and for once again hosting this event. Unfortunately, we can't be in person, but I always tailor my speeches knowing to give the mayor a little extra time. So with that, it's just the way it works. But on behalf of myself and the mayor, I want to thank you again for allowing us to share our thoughts on the state of the county and the city. What a difference a year makes. It's hard to even put into words what this speech would look like just 6 months ago. On Friday, March 13th, I gave a welcoming at the basketball tournament at Metro Park First Interstate Arena. At that time, we were starting to see events cancel all around the world. And I made the statement, it was probably the last sporting event being played in the country at the time. Little did we really know that that really was the last basketball game of the season and how our world would change. COVID-19 changed our world and our community. And I am proud to say Yellowstone County stepped up, faced the issues of COVID-19 head on. From declaring the emergency to preparing for all of the unknowns, plus doing it in a way that puts our citizens and taxpayers in a position to get reimbursed from FEMA and the CARES Act, I believe we are on solid ground. We have been working hard to protect the citizens of Yellowstone County. From the very beginning, we have known that this was going to be a difficult journey with many unknowns. As we opened up the Disaster and Emergency Services Manual, Mayor, you know this book, very familiar as well, we noticed one of the tabs seemed to be missing, and that was simply a global pandemic. It wasn't in the book, and so we had to go to work writing the manual. It became obvious that this was going to be something that was changing our world and our community forever. Most of the models in this book are based on short-term natural disasters for the most part. And we started realizing right away that this was going to be long-term. Our models were going to have to be expanded. This was going to require groups coming together and working as a team. I'm here to report that the citizens of Yellowstone County stepped up to the plate. We are stronger now because of that cooperation. Together, we started to address everything from hospitals to the most vulnerable and at risk in our community. We also realized that this was going to take a five-legged stool. We were going to have to be working with our hospitals and county health officer, emergency first responders, fire and EMS, the continuum of care in our at-risk community, law enforcement, and probably more significant than ever, approaching the economic community, realizing the impact this was going to have. Together with all of these groups, we came up with plans and began executing them as quickly as possible. Big Sky Economic Development and the Billings Chamber helped with economic recovery and began helping businesses track and create the necessary paperwork that we are going to need. Medical professionals came together to give direction and guidance. First responders were dealing with the concerns of a panicked public and concerns of workers being exposed to an unknown force. Our at-risk and homeless issues needed immediate attention as well. Needless to say, many long days and short nights have brought us to a place where we are here for just being able to do as much as we possibly can. If we actually started listing the names of everybody who helped and participated, I would outlast the mayor's speech. But simply what I want to say to everyone is thank you. Thank you for stepping up. Thank you for offering your expertise and your knowledge. One of the things we asked for at the very beginning when the mayor and I spoke at one of the press conferences was to forgive us if we messed up, but to really know that our hearts are in it, trying to make sense of the unknown as we move forward. So what is the state of Yellowstone County? We are strong and we are beginning to heal. We are shaken, but we are working on plans to resume life that will be different. We are planning, but aware of many uncertain times ahead. What will events look like going forward? Discreetly trying to share the screen. I think the big thing everybody has on their mind is what will Metro Park and the fair look like? Over the last 6 months and before COVID-19, we had began a process of looking at a draft of a master plan for Metro Park. What are we going to be doing? Well, I can tell you right now at this point, we are planning and in the process of demolishing and tearing down the grandstands, paving the carnival lot, and readdressing the issues of the barns and building a new horse barn. For many of you, this might be the first time you've seen some of these. They're part of the draft options, and if you want to see more detail on them, feel free to give me a call or look it up and we'll be able to get you a copy of this. But it kind of gives you an idea of some of the ideas we are looking at as far as the Board of Commissioners and the Metro Park Advisory Board. This is our 189 acres and everything that we are looking at addressing. But you can't just keep it on the grounds. You have to look to the west and realize that the earbird is there and potentially has some amazing options for us. As Charlie started giving us some options, one of the things that he addressed was at some point separating the clean First Interstate Arena and looking at addressing a dirt facility that could accommodate our tradition of rodeo and outdoor events. That comes to look in number 23 here with kind of a proposed miniature arena that would be able to facilitate that and maybe some other options. There's the idea of an outdoor venue and to which direction people would look at to seek some type of an amphitheater. And then there's the expo. Currently, the the grandstand is in about this area. So you see that we actually cut out as they built the expo to accommodate the grandstands. Expanding that out and offering some new facilities in there will certainly offer some opportunities for the entire community. This kind of gives some of the ideas. So one of the things, even in a dirt arena, is you could possibly put ice below it and have both facilities operating with about 35 to 4,500 people in it. This is another idea that we had discussed and have approached by the school district of a possible outdoor football arena, multi-use facility there as well. Obviously, there's a lot of options out there. And then on the backside here is the potential of some type of campground. And then this would be additional parking. We're working with the state on First Avenue and the approach into the city with a new entrance into Metro Park, and then an additional right lane going all around the facilities. So this is a major change and exciting for us. There's a lot of opportunity out there, and we're looking forward to hearing from people and what their thoughts are on the ideas that are being proposed. If you have any ideas, please feel free to contact us. I don't have a crystal ball, but I can assure you that from the beginning, the Board of County Commissioners has been focused on how we move forward, how we protect the people of our community, and what needs to be in place for now and well into the future. It proved to us that the partnerships that we had formed became stronger, and that we also then were able to reach out and have new relationships. One of those relationships was with the Montana National Guard, and now I can tell you that we have a safety net. They came in and built a 90-bed facility that was then torn down and stored, and now within 1 week we can have that facility up and running, whether it be here in Yellowstone County or just pods of that being sent throughout the state to help any community that might be in crisis. So it became a huge asset for our community. 4 months ago, I have to be honest, I had not heard of Zoom, Teams, Hangouts, Skype for Business, and now they've become a standard way of life. I think we've realized the importance of face-to-face interaction, but also found a new efficiency in reaching out to people in ways that we've never been able to do. I could spend hours telling you about all that is happening, but I wanted to give some of my time to the mayor, but also more importantly, an opportunity for you to ask your questions and concerns for me and the mayor. So I will open it up from this point.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner. All right. We've got our question and answer time now, and I've got one question in the Q&A box, but would just offer one last reminder before we get going that please submit your questions in there. One submitter will be randomly chosen at the end of the program for a Northern gift card. So we'll start with this question we've got right now, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit to broaden it for both of our presenters here. I'll keep the spirit of it just to make sure that we've got that. So to both of you, with the unrest that both of you talked about going around the nation, and we certainly had our share of protests, peaceful but well attended. What did the planning look like? How did you work together to make sure that that event got pulled off? But in the event that something bad happened, what kind of plans were in place? What kind of contingencies had you looked at? And how would that have been approached by city police, county sheriff's department, et cetera?
So I'll take that to begin with. So one of the things that we have dramatically changed, and it's a fundamental change within our community, is our DES, Disaster and Emergency Services. It's no longer just fires and floods. It's addressing a lot of other issues that are going on in our community. We now have the resources to bring, and it's what this department was designed to do, bring all of these entities together working together and cooperating with each other so that we're all on the same page and that we have each other's back. And I think it worked very well. There's a lot of stuff goes on in the background, and the less you see and know about what's going on actually proves how well it's actually working. They were present throughout our entire community. They had a well thought out plan, and they have to think of everything from the best case scenario to the worst case scenario and be ready to implement any of that. And even with the last events that we had in downtown Billings, whether people knew it or not, there was a huge presence there. There was monitoring going on. There were several plans available, and thank goodness everything went well. And I think that is a testament to DES and our law enforcement and all of the people that cooperated in our community to make it a positive event.
Thank you, Dennis. I agree with everything that Dennis said. This was a little bit of an unusual circumstance in that the city government, county government, and police law enforcement had advance warning and plenty of time to get ready. And they used that time to communicate with the protest organizers in the case of the George Floyd event, who were very cooperative, and they created a team because they all wanted the same thing, which was peaceful protest to get the message across in a good way without violence. And so the sheriff was at the press conference that I attended and spoke at, along with Chief St. John, and with the protesters who also spoke at that event. We don't always have the benefit of that time, so, but this was a great example. It also just shows the benefit of a community where people know each other and have those relationships. So much comes down to relationships. As Denis said, there was planning for other scenarios. Police officers were staged in City Hall just in case, but we're very careful to stay out of the picture. And that low-key approach, of course, made a lot of sense and worked out very well. The bigger question will be going ahead. How can we work together to address here in Billings some of the legitimate issues about policing and community policing, and working together and building those relationships so there's credibility for the police department, which is good for minority communities, but also good for police departments, and building that empathy. I said it in my remarks, it's impossible for a middle-aged white guy to really know what it's like to be a person of color. But similarly, it's impossible for those of us who have not been police officers to put ourselves in their shoes and know what it's like to have to make life and death decisions with a matter of seconds, where your life and the lives of those around you may be at stake. So empathy is everything.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. We've got some questions coming in about budgets here. We heard about what's going on with the city and that funding gap. This question is, what is the long-term impact on revenue lost due to cancellation of events at the Metro facility? And then a follow on here, will the remodeling and expansion plans be affected?
So that's a great question. Right now, actually, financially, Yellowstone County is looking very solid. Our reserves are in great shape, and some of the bids we've been getting out at Metro Park have come in substantially under what we were expecting. So it's allowing us to do some things that we were being very cautious when this first began because of the uncertainty as to where we were headed. One of the big factors is that the fare is probably a third of the budget out at Metro Park. But when you reduce the amount of expenses and then you start just bringing in the things that we make money on, we think we're going to come fairly close to at least breaking even this year. What does that look like in the future? We're struggling with that because we're not sure what the requirements of the acts are going to be, what extra things that they're going to want, what the health department is going to put on us as far as expectations. But we're optimistic. We're trying to figure out ways to make this happen and make it happen in a new way that keeps people safe. We have the opportunity, we're having the 4th of July celebration move to the upper parking lot of Metro Park. What a great place and one of the highest spots in the area to where almost the entire city would be able to see the fireworks display and celebrate our freedom and independence, but at the same time keeping some social distancing and things like that. But as far as the budget goes, at some point, user fees are going to probably have to be adjusted out at Metro Park. We're looking at partnering with some different groups to offset some of the cost. If you look at the full-blown master plan, if we wanted to build it right now, the estimate was somewhere between 80 and $100 million. Obviously being sensitive to what the city's needs, the school district needs, but looking at those partnerships, if you actually see the plans there, we kind of took some of the ideas from the One Big Sky Eye project to expand the expo and provide the necessary larger spaces that now we're actually going to be needing for any kind of social distancing, plus the capacity to provide a lot of alternative events out there. All of those put together will require all of us working together. It's that simple. We can't do this on our own. This can't be just on the backs of the taxpayers. We've talked about it as a chamber, as a Big Sky Economic Development, and as a governing board over the last couple of years. These public-private partnerships are critical going forward. There's just no way that the old system of the taxpayers foot the bill 100% and then everybody else profits from it works. You have to have a lot of people with a lot of skin in the game making this a success, and I think that's what we're looking at as we move forward with Metro Park.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I would just bring the mayor in on this one as well, because with a decrease in events, the city is likely to actually see a little bit of a decrease in a special revenue account, namely the gas tax, which our local government gets back when folks pay at the pump, when they come for events that might have been hosted at the Metro Park. So, Mayor, what's the city done to get proper estimates, make sure that we're going to be financially sound with what's likely to be a decrease in revenue there from the gas tax?
Thank you, Dan. That is a good point. We do not know what those estimates are at this point. The gas tax is an important component of funding the Inner Belt Loop. And if we do not get the build grant, that could, I suppose, theoretically delay commencement of construction on the Inner Belt Loop. We'll be looking to try to get those numbers. The greater concern, frankly, though, was property tax collections and whether COVID-19 would result in significant delinquencies. The good news there is it has not at the end of May. That's relatively early in the process. People were still getting their PPP checks and their unemployment checks. So the other foot may fall come November, but at this point, at least, we have not seen high levels of delinquencies relative to past practice. What we have seen, however, are large, truly unprecedented delinquencies on utility payments. The governor told municipalities they could not cut people off, and I think out of a lot of fear, a lot of people just stopped paying their utility bills. Of course, the governor's rules did not relieve them of that obligation. It just said we couldn't cut them off. And so that rule has been dropped by the governor. And so the city is now reaching out, reminding people they have an obligation to pay all of those utility bills, but also stressing the city will work with anybody who is delinquent to come up with installment plans, because if they don't get paid, that's just cost that the rest of us have to pick up.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, we've got another question here kind of on improvements to the Metro, but I would add and make this kind of a question for both of you. In those draft plans, each of them included a rail link between Metro and downtown Billings that could help to facilitate greater movement in between, say, folks eating dinner downtown and then heading to an event at the Metro that could be very beneficial for both. So can you just help us? What would it take to make something like that happen, the cooperation and partnership between city and county? And whoever wants to start out with it, I guess we can probably go to the commissioner with his screen.
I just screen shared that just for a minute. I can go back to it at any point if you would like. You know, it goes back to everything we're saying, whether it be the bridge across Main Street that goes into the eBird, whether it be this corridor. This is a county island that's pretty much becoming surrounded by the city. So obviously the partnership of us working together to find out what will work is significant. And I think we have that great relationship. Whether it all come to fruition or not, again, I don't have the crystal ball, but I do know that we're at the table and we're having the conversations, and it's great to dream big. What an amazing opportunity to look at our community and go, let's dream big. We may not get all of it, but let's put it out there and let's have the discussion and see what our community is capable of doing. So one thing I've seen in this entire process has been our community stepping up. I've never seen so much excitement about what's going on at Metro Park and the potential out there and the surrounding area. Billings is posed to do some amazing things in the near future, and we are situated in a way in which we can do this and accomplish amazing things and put us as a jewel that we've always anticipated and knew we were. But, you know, it's kind of interesting. People are seeing us and going, wow, Billings has internet and running water. Maybe we should look at this again. And it's put us on the map because people are looking at us in a whole different way. And I think we have the potential now to address some of those issues.
Dan, imagine a situation where the Fifth Avenue rail corridor that most people don't even know exists. For anybody who doesn't know what that is, we have no Fifth Avenue, but we do have a set of train tracks and right away that goes from the metro all the way to the core of downtown. Imagine a scenario where that could be turned into a pedestrian and bike corridor, perhaps with the railroad tracks still there, and an old-fashioned train or trolley that would go back and forth at 5 or 10 miles an hour, lots of landscaping, historic signage along the way, coffee shops, ice cream shops, kids museum, whatever it is. The core of downtown, between downtown and Metro and the Heights, would get an amazing economic boost, and it would be one of those great things that people talk about whenever they come to Billings. Tremendous potential, and we do have to dream big. How can it be funded, I think was your question. That's got a lot of potential. It may not be a particularly expensive project. We're not talking about building buildings, largely landscaping. Be incredibly sexy and appealing for private donors, for federal grants. A public works department in Billings could probably find some street construction dollars for it. So the first part, though, is to go through the planning process, which the planning department will be doing here in the next year. But what an amazing opportunity we have to connect Metro with downtown and Metro with Colson Park and the river around under the I-90 bridge. The I-90 bridges are going to be reconstructed. So we have an opportunity to create a larger passageway to connect the park system north of the bridges to Colson Park, and then continuing down to Mystic Park and completing our marathon loop.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think you just sparked the next subcommittee for TrailNet, the Sexy Sidewalks subcommittee. So we'll see if Billings TrailNet wants to take that one on. Next question here. This one is to the mayor. With the budget passed earlier this week, the city is relying on passage of the repeal and replace levy this fall. Can you shed some light on this solution and discuss what the outlook is and options if the levy fails?
Well, knock on wood, it will not, and we need everybody's support to support it in the hopes that it does pass. But it's a very important question, because if it does not pass, that means we're about $4 million short. And we're going to have to look to the same menu smorgasbord of options that we cobbled together in this year's budget. That probably means a possible increase of Park District 1, which can only be increased a couple $1 million, and there's not a lot of political support for that. That's one option. Cuts are always an option, but those would be very painful. We do have some remaining reserves, but there's always a need for those reserves. There's always a rainy day. We still have to resolve our Hauser lawsuit over the franchise fee. Those don't just go away typically without settlement money, and we've made offers there. If it passes, we've got time to buy some time to come back with a much larger levy, but if it does not pass, those are our only options. Tapping our last remaining reserves, looking to Park District 1 and looking at some level of cuts.
Okay, thank you. All right, we got time for one more question, so I want to make sure that we can include both of you here. Becky Bai, who's with Substance Abuse Connect, just kind of posted a reminder here that that group is working on some solutions in partnership with the city and the county on assisting, supporting law enforcement and their ongoing efforts to address substance abuse and addiction in our community. Can you just tell us a little bit about what the city and county's role and how both entities are helping to address those two major issues in Billings? We'll start with the mayor.
One of the great disappointments of COVID-19 is not being able to go to the voters and ask for a much larger public safety mill levy that would have provided several $100,000 to support the Substance Abuse Connect Coalition efforts to provide better mental health and substance abuse prevention, education, and that money is not available in our budget anymore. That was going to be a step one. The city has not historically been involved with mental health and substance abuse. We have a lack of experience. We have no department that's devoted to that, and we have no funding. So our support is, I hate to say just moral support, but it also comes on the law enforcement end. So maybe we can work to try to have more community policing. Our police officers do not like to deal with those issues if they can avoid it, but they often don't have any choice. Maybe we can look at some redirection of funding to some small extent, but our spirit is willing, but our budget is weak, but we'll help in any way that we can.
So one of the things, and I'll just follow up, Mayor, you're exactly right. One of the things we learned even more so with the COVID-19 issues were the importance in working together, that we had to address this issue. It was a key component of our community and how we were going to respond to that. We learned a lot, but we really, it re-emphasized what the needs were in our community, that the co-location of services actually is a positive thing that helps consolidate, because at a time when things get into crisis like it did, even the staff to provide those services becomes limited. So the more that we can share areas or co-locate become very important. We started this conversation a year ago at our State of the County address, and those conversations have been very good as we move forward. We had another conversation as we're doing our budget yet this week on what does this look like going forward? How do we provide the necessary services and keep our community safe? And also address the co-occurring issues of both substance abuse and mental health. And it's interesting. It's when you get into a crisis, you start really realizing where the key components are. And we started realizing that we don't need to it's actually not very efficient for us to have all of those services spread throughout the city, that moving them into a more consolidated area, partnering and working with each other versus against each other is critical. And I think we're doing a great job as we move forward in doing that and making it a better community. It takes some hard discussion, and it's not about winners and losers. It's about making sure that everybody on all sides of this issue are safe and taken care of. And there's a lot of components to that, whether it be the jail, whether it be the Community Crisis Center, the Mental Health Center, Rimrock Foundation, alternatives. They're all coming together and realizing, here's what I do better, here's what you do better. How do we work together to make this a better product for everybody?
All right. Well, thank you to you both for coming and giving your addresses this morning. We appreciate your time. And I suspect that if it wasn't for the webinar, we'd see all the clapping hands emojis. But know that we thank you for that. Also, thank you to the folks who submitted question and answer. We had 9 total. I did a little random number generator. Number 7 wins, and that is Mr. Ron Yates. So you are the proud new owner of a $25 Northern gift certificate. Please email Jennifer at our office for that. So thanks a bit, again, everybody, for attending. And with that, I will turn it over to John Brewer for the last word and a special thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Mayor and Commissioner. The Chamber's working toward a post-pandemic community where businesses thrive, its residents, workforce are healthy and successful, and a place where families and individuals want to relocate. So to meet those objectives this week, the Chamber Board of Directors approved our top priorities for the upcoming year, and they very similar, mirror what the Mayor and Commissioner were talking about. Our focus this year is going to be to improve the health of our businesses by providing COVID-19 support. Our second priority is equality of opportunity for all of our residents. Not only do we want to see a community that's open and safe, but to become nationally competitive for talent and entrepreneurship, Billings must be open for all. And I encourage people to participate in the U.S. Chamber's Diversity and Inclusion Summit, which is tomorrow, Thursday, at 11:30. I'd be happy to supply you with that free information on how to connect with that group if you're interested. Third priority is a safer Billings. And lastly, it's policy and people matter. In January 2021, the people we elect to set our policy will meet in Helena to act on business, community, and societal issues. So selecting business-friendly candidates to serve as elected leaders is the first step to developing our business-friendly policies. July 1st also marks the new fiscal year, and with that comes the changing of our elected leadership. And I just wanted to thank Brian Brown from First Interstate Bank for his chairmanship over this past year and the great job he's done in navigating really uncharted territory for all of us. As we move towards July 1st, our new chair of the board for the Chamber of Commerce is Mike Nelson with the Northern Hotel. So Mike, we're looking forward to a great year ahead, and thank you for stepping up for your service. Lastly, just a quick thank you to Entree Technologies and the Northern Hotel for sponsoring today's program. So thank you, everybody, and have a great day.